Hello everybody, it's Murray here and we're going to paint on today's acrylic painting tutorial for beginners this realistic water scene. I'm going to teach you how to blend realistic colours super easily, how to paint waves over the top with different types of brushes that really quickly, and then how to paint sparkles and beautiful highlights so you can produce a really realistic painting of water in just over 25 minutes. So let's get into it. So a really easy tutorial today. You're only going to need these colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow, cad red, cerulean blue, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple and Payne's grey. Now I've got a 12 by 16 inch canvas that's already prepped. I've got all my warm colours that we're going to use to mix some highlights and some cool colours, different types of blues to mix the shadows and the water. And all we're going to do, we're going to paint the underpainting first. We're just going to paint the background sea. So we're going to get some phthalo blue, which is more of a turquoisey blue. And we're going to add lots of white to it. Add some ultramarine blue, which is more purpley blue. Add a little bit of red to turn it more purpley. A little bit of yellow to turn it more green. And we're just going to make this lovely sort of pastel colour. We can add more blues if it's too yellowy. So we're just adding some more of the phthalo and ultramarine blue, and then we're putting it back. Now this is dioxazine purple. You can use this to cool colours down to turn it more grey. So we're just trying to get a nice bright bluey grey. There we go. And this is going to be the mid colour. Now I'm just fast forwarding it because all I'm doing is just blocking in a solid chunk of one colour. Anything technical, I will put the speed back to normal speed, but all I'm doing, look, I'm just blocking it in. I had a bit too much water on my brush, so I've just given it a second coat of paint just to get some of those streaks and horrible marks of my canvas showing through. So if that happens to you, you can always dry your work and just give it a second coat of paint and that gets rid of them. So there we go. We're going to do about halfway down and we're going to stop, and we should have just this lovely sort of half painted canvas. We're going to get a little bit darker as we go down, so we're going to add more phthalo blue, more ultramarine blue, and a little bit of the purple and a little bit of yellow to turn it more green, and a little bit of red to turn it a little bit more purpley. We should get a dark bluey grey. It's still got a little bit of white from the previous colour, but not much. So you can add a tiny bit more. And then all we're going to do, look, again, I'm just going to block in a chunk underneath. Excuse the focus. Now I've just realised I was wearing a vest when I was painting this and I look naked. I assure you I wasn't in the buff painting. Right, and then all we're going to do is we're going to create X shapes and we're just going to blend these two shades together. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just gently easing up on my brush. I'm just moving my brush back and forth really gently, and while the paint is wet I'm just trying to blend these two colours just so you get a nice transition. Don't worry if it is a bit scruffy because that actually adds to the charm. We're just getting darker as we go down because it kind of looks like waves, so don't worry. So look, we're just going to mix our two blues, our purple, our yellow and our red again, but this time we've got more purple and more ultramarine blue to make it darker. And then we're going to add Payne's grey, which is kind of like an off black, a very dark colour, and we're just going to block in the bottom of the painting. Now if you find, look, my brush was the same brush I used for the previous colour, it's not dark enough, look, you can add more blues to your mix if you want to get it darker, and more Payne's grey. So Payne's grey is really good. Just don't forget to add you a little bit of yellow just to turn it a little bit tinge of green to look like seawater. And then as I say, look, we're just going to make the colour at the bottom a little bit darker. And if you do get some scuffs and scrapes, as I say, you can dry your paint and go over it twice, but really don't worry too much. It kind of adds to the charm. So look, mine's really scruffy. I'm just going to try to gently blend it, but I'm not too fussed because we're going to paint waves over the top. And as I say, if we have some scuffs, it kind of looks like the waves and the shadows anyway. So don't worry. Right, So when you're happy with it, please dry your painting. And what we're going to do now is we're going to paint the waves over the top. So we're just going to get some phthalo blue, some ultramarine blue, a little bit of cerulean blue, lots of blues. And we're just going to make a light sort of blue. There we go. We're going to add a tiny bit of a yellow to turn it a little bit more green. Sort of like a bluey grey. And I'm going to load up a flat brush. See my brush? It's like a flat-headed screwdriver. So it's the 3 blues and a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to load up my brush either side. Look. See, that's really, really easy. Now the reason I use a flat brush, if I zoom in for you, is because it's so easy to do straight lines. Now waves in the distance are pretty flat and waves at the bottom are pretty big and round and curvy. And the ones at the top seem to be really squashed together and the ones at the bottom tend to be really big. So I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So at the top of your canvas, what I want you to do is try to do the best that you can, and that's why I would advise using this flat brush because it's straight. Try to do flat lines going horizontal across your canvas. You can leave little gaps like I'm doing, and it kind of looks like little divots, little wave heads. And just try to leave small gaps in between them. And it should look like they're a bit squashed together. They're a bit flat. But it should look like waves kind of fading off into the distance. Can you see how that's tricking your eye? There we go. So they're pretty flat and they're pretty close together. Now as we come down, look, we're just going to get a little bit darker blue. I've just added a little bit ultramarine and a little bit phthalo blue. Just a tad darker. We're going to get more swoopy and more curvy. So this is a bit more feminine. So think of a wave. Water's really rounded. We're just going to create little scoops. So imagine it scoops down, look like a big scoop. And we can kind of join areas up together. And they're a little bit further apart. They're not as squashed together. So they're quite spacious. So all I'm doing, look. I'm just making these sort of little triangle sort of shapes, but I'm making sure they're very rounded. They haven't got really sharp edges. I want everything to be nice and smooth and curvy. So can you see how the top bit's really flat and how the middle bit's getting thicker? And as we come down, look, we're getting even further apart now. We're getting further away from each other. And we're doing these big chunky waves now. And they've got bigger shadows. So there we go, look. Really, really easy. We can even have these big scoops, these big areas where it's getting lots of shade. So again, I kind of create these sort of shapes, like these rounded shapes. And you can join areas up, look, you can have little areas where there's little bits of shadow, just so it all links up. So these are all the little divots, little rounded pockets of water. So I'm just trying to create these sort of shadows. So we got that all sort of fading away. And as we come down here, we're just going to get a little bit darker. But just before we do that, I'm just going to get a small brush. And I'm just going to put in some fine detail with a small brush. Now, the reason I've flipped for a small brush is because it's so spindly. It's like using a pencil. I can just do little lines around areas of my waves and just make them look a bit more realistic. So all I'm doing, I'm just adding a little bit of paint to my sharp brush, and I'm just doing sharp lines and little indents kind of thing, just to join areas together. So if there's big gaps, I can just have some little detail. And it's so much easier to use a sharp brush because then you can get fine detail. You don't have to have an expensive brush. You can use one for literally £1 or $1. But you just want one that's really thin, because it's like using a really sharp pencil. It's so much easier to get little dainty straight lines. And especially now, look, if I go right up to the top now and just do little divots that are really thin and straight, it's so much easier using a tiny brush than trying to use my big flat chunky one. So we're just putting like the illusion of detail. And when we go up here, you can use a little bit of water on your paint, so it's a little bit less harsh. And look, you can just put in these little indents. They're just barely noticeable, but they just look like the caps of waves. So this is perfect for beginners. It's super easy. It's nothing really hard what we're doing. Now down here, mine looks really rough. It looks like a shark, like a shadow or something is coming up from the bottom. So that kind of adds to the charm. So let's paint a big wave over the top and sort of get rid of that scruffy area. So let's get phthalo blue and ultramarine blue and Payne's grey now and dioxazine purple. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of red just to neutralise the colour and turn it a bit more grey. It takes a bit of the vibrancy out. Look, just adding a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red. We can take some of the vibrancy of the blues out, turn it more grey. And this is going to be a very dark blue. You see that? So let's just add a little bit of cerulean blue just to make it less harsh. So it's still blue, but it's more greyish now. Here we go. So I've mixed it all up. Happy with the colour. And then let's do some big chunky ones down the bottom that are really dark. So it's the same principle. We're trying to be further apart and we're trying to do it much harsher. But if you imagine if the light is coming from the top and it's beaming down on the water, this area at the bottom of the painting is going to be a little bit darker. It's further away from the light. So by using these harsher shadows, these darker blues, again, it just tricks your eyes and it makes your work look really realistic, but without any technical ability. So it's really, really easy trick. Perfect for beginners. Really easy tips. So I'm just making these big shadows. And I can even use this blue to add some harsh areas of these shadows and kind of link the two areas together. So a bit like our underpainting, can you see now how it's starting to trick your eyes where the light blue is blended into the dark blue? Now we're putting these waves over the top. You don't even notice it. It just looks like it's natural, like it's sort of the transitions are really good. Well, we don't want really jumps in colours in the waves either. We kind of want to make everything look natural and realistic. So I don't want to go too far up with this dark blue because it will make things like the waves not look like they're fading out. So certain areas, I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow, look, just a little bit. But if it's too harsh and I've done it too dark, I can always use my finger and smudge it a little bit just to take some of the darkness out. So look, if I do it too dark, look, I can just rub it and just make it look less harsh. But I'm just trying to link these kind of areas together so it looks really natural. So as I say, you can use your finger to soften up areas. We just want all the transitions to be really nice and soft. If you think of water, you don't notice any transition. It's so perfect. So just relax, take your time. So I'm just going to speed up the footage now. Now you kind of know how to do it. So it's just me literally doing the same trick. I'm just getting my thin brush and I'm just doing darker little divots now because we're coming further down like we did at the top. But I'm still using the same equipment. And then all I'm doing is at the bottom, I'm just making these divots very big and very dark using that dark blue with some Payne's grey. So really easy, nothing technical. Take your time. With the tutorial, as I say, we're just speeding up the footage where there's bits that are repetitive. But go at your own speed. The great thing about YouTube, you can turn down the speed and you can fast forward the speed. So if you find that it's going too fast, slow it down or pause the video. And if you find that it's really easy, speed it up. Go at your own pace. It's your painting. So look, I'm just noticing areas that I've missed. I'm just putting in these little divots. I'm just taking my time when I was painting this at home. There we go. So this is all dry now. I've dried it with a hairdryer. That was my impression of a hairdryer. So now we're going to work on the light. So we've done all the hard work. That was the hardest bit. And that wasn't even hard. So now we're going to work on the lovely light. So before we do the sparkles, we're going to create some highlights. So we're going to get some white and some ultramarine blue to create like a sky color. And that's a bit too dark, so we're going to add lots and lots of white to make a pale blue. Look, watch. So loads of white. And we should get a nice sort of sky horizon sort of color. A nice sort of like sky blue day. There we go. And we're going to swap back to a clean flat brush again. So we've got a flat brush. And we can load it up. So it's put paint on both sides. And what we're going to do, we're just going to wipe off 80-90% of the paint with a paper towel. So we've got hardly any on our brush. My brush is dry. It's very, very soft. It's not expensive. It's just a cheapy brush, but it's completely clean and it's completely dry. It's not got any water on it. So if I zoom in for you, I'm just doing it at the top. So if I zoom in for you, all I'm doing, look, I'm trying to follow the shapes of the waves. Now we've created these divots, and I'm just adding this lovely pastel white and blue over the top. And this will look like the sky is reflecting down onto the ocean. So it's a little trick. Now the reason I've got a dry brush and hardly any paint, do you remember we wiped away most of the paint? Is because look, I can sort of smudge it and I can push back those waves by painting over them, and it gives like a chalky residue of paint. So it's almost like shading my painting like you would colour in with a pencil. Look, I can even smudge it with my fingers. So all I'm doing is I'm just trying to create this sort of chalky whitey blue over the top, and this just looks like the sunlight, this lovely blue sky above, just shining down. And because we're following the waves, look, if I want to soften areas up, I can just colour over them. So just take your time, just try to follow the waves. As I say, I'm going to come down towards the right a little bit as I move down, just because when we put the sparkles over the top, I kind of want them kind of moving from left to right. So I'm just making my way down the painting, trying to follow these grooves. If they're too harsh, look, I can just rub them with my finger, make them smoother. Nothing technical, just use your finger, don't have to worry about it. I'm just letting the paint sort of run out as I move down into the painting. So I'm just going to put the speed up a little bit because it's just repetitive, it's just the same thing. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just coming down, but I'm just moving slightly towards the right because I kind of want my little sparkles to come diagonally. I'm just going over bits that I want to highlight a little bit more. So just like any acrylic paint, if you want to highlight areas, just go over it a bit more. And that looks really cool. So let's work on the last part, the sparkles. So all we're going to do is we're going to mix some white and cerulean blue. So white and cerulean blue to our sky colour. And a little bit of yellow just to warm her up. But yellow turns blue-green. So we're just going to pull it back and just add a little bit more cerulean blue. And we should get this lovely sort of white turquoisey sort of colour. Really sort of pastel turquoise. And all we're going to do, I'm going to use a round-headed brush like a normal paintbrush. And I'm going to create little splats. And these are going to be the basis for our water sparkles. So I'm just going to put some at the top and then I'll zoom in for you so you can see it closer. But I'm trying to follow the shape of the waves, just like we did with the highlights. I'm trying to put the sparkles on the edges of the waves that sort of fall in line with all the grooves. I don't want to kind of put the sparkles on the shadow areas, the darker bits. So look, if I do a few here, now I'm zoomed in. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have some areas that have little clumps, and I'm just making the edges nice and round. Again, very smooth and feminine. I don't want any sharp angles. I want everything to look quite blurry and smooth. Curves in them. So look, I'm following the shape. So this wave comes up a little bit. So let's put it on the edges like this bit. Kind of don't want to put any really on the shadows. I just want them on the areas that are getting the highlights. And try to have like little clumps in areas. and then little dots in other areas. Don't have them all the same. Variety is the spice of life. So we want to have different ones, different shapes and sizes. So look, I could have a little clump there. We could have different shapes over here. Some clumped together, some out on their own. So look, if I push really hard, look, I get a big clump. If I just tap, I get really, really soft sort of cotton ball edges. So again, have a mixture of that. Have some that are really chunky and quite clumped together, and then have other ones that are just really soft, barely noticeable. So just go at your own speed. Just keep doing them till you're happy with it. So I'm going to have odd ones off to the side now, some in the middle. So if you're finding this tutorial really helpful, we have 170 tutorials, step-by-step tutorials for acrylic painting and oil painting on the channel. So please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much for everyone who already has liked and subscribed and shares all the videos. We really, really appreciate it. I'm going to do a whole series on water and painting water with different ones like waves and different sort of times of the day like sunsets and dusk and things like these sparkle videos, because I really enjoy painting water and it's really relaxing and it doesn't take much effort to do. So we're going to do lots of them. So please subscribe to the channel and you can see and be notified when they come available. So that looks really, really cool. So please dry your painting again. So you can either air dry it or dry it with a hairdryer. And I would like you to get a pot or a bottle of white. I've got my broken lucky brush here. Look, this is a lovely nice brush and this is my broken brush but I love it and it's so small and it's just really, really handy. So I've kept it for years and I always use it. And all I'm going to do is dip it directly into my pot of my little bit of white, and now I'm going to add sparkles over the top. Now this brush has got a really nice soft edge. So all I'm going to do is create little blurry circles. So if I zoom in for you, I'm going to load up my brush with a big dollop of white. And what I'm doing, I'm deliberately doing the dots within the blue. So it kind of looks like they've got a blue hum or glow around them. I'm not going right all the way around. I'm kind of leaving a blue outline, if that makes sense. So look, I'm kind of filling in a gap. So think of a fried egg. You have the yolk in the middle and then you have the white edge. Well, the white is going to kind of be the yolk, and then the edge is going to be the sort of turquoisey blue. I hope that makes sense. So we're trying to create like a hum around the white. And you don't have to do it on all of them. And you can create shapes within that hum. So look, I'm not always just doing a round circle. Some of them I'm smudging, some of them I'm having a bit joined together, and some I'm just doing a little white sparkle just off to the side. So just take your time, think of where you want to have them. There's no rules. Now what a lot of people don't tell you about acrylics is they tend to dry a little bit flat. So when we're zoomed in like this and the paint is wet, this white looks ultra vibrant and really sparkly and lovely. But sometimes when it dries, you've got all that blue that we've painted underneath, and the white will absorb that and get quite murky and sort of lose a bit of its vibrancy. So if you find that happens, you can always dry your work and add a second coat of white. There's no rule against you doing it once or twice. So I always do these sparkles to begin with. So I always do these sparkles, and then when I'm finished, I always dry my painting with a hairdryer and I just give it a second coat of white just to make my sparkles ultra sparkly. So don't be afraid to do that at home. It's a really common trick that a lot of acrylic tutorials don't tell you. So I've put her on a lovely easel and I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So we've got this lovely gradient in the water. We've got this underpainting. You've got the darkened corners at the bottom. You've learned how to paint waves with the flat waves off into the distance and the bigger waves that are further apart down the bottom to create perspective. You've learned how to put the highlights going around the waves to create the illusion of light and then you've learned how to do the little round sparkles and then the jet white over the top. So we've painted this fantastic realistic water painting in acrylic paints in what, 25 minutes. That is pretty damn easy and pretty damn going. So if you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great week ahead, and happy painting everyone. Take care, see you soon, bye.